I'm going to present to you today three very, very quick trends. I literally am standing between you and lunch. I really appreciate that. Three really quick trends on what the future of candidates are and where they are living and how we can interact with them. The first of these is the Uberization of temp volume staffing. So everybody's heard of Uber? Yes? Yeah, we probably all use Halo. It's Irish/UK equivalent then as well. So Uber obviously is a ride-sharing app where ordinary people can, with a full driver's license and a car, can become taxi drivers. There's a very, very minimal barrier to entry in order to use that skill that they have, that talent that we like to call it, that skill that they have of being able to drive and know their way around a city. And they always tell their Uber story when you're in the back of their cab as well, how they became Uber drivers and how it's working for them, etc. But all of this means that it's driven through apps. Now, apps are not even 10 years old. The iPhone was literally still housed up in a locked bunker in Cupertino in Apple up until next year will be its 10-year anniversary. And apps have absolutely transformed the way in which we live our lives. We are bound by them every night. So we use our mobile phone apps for our alarm clocks, sometimes even to monitor our sleep. We use them to monitor how well of a run we've had, how many steps we've taken today. We use it for our email, to access Facebook, to get photographs, to communicate with our friends. We use it for banking services. We now use it for ordering people services. And some of those apps, for example, Hassle.com. So you've all heard of Hassle as well. So its co-founder, Irish woman Jules Coleman. We love to get a bit of Irish in there. Hassle was bought last year for £32 million. That's the value of, at the very early stage of this particular startup of Hassle, where, again, you could order people services. This specifically meant that ordering people services of those who were cleaners. So you've had a big party last night. I don't feel like cleaning up myself. So I'm just going to order a cleaner through Hassle, through the app, and a cleaner will arrive in a couple of hours. All payments and contracts are facilitated through this app. So as individuals, if I'm a cleaner, for example, or I can just lend my services, me in particular, I'm quite OCD. Shane in the green hoodie here will definitely attest to that. I'm the cleaner of our kitchen in our office. But we become an employer. We become are self-employed then as well through this app. We can manage our own time, we can manage our skills, and we get ourselves out there without having to go the whole route of setting up an app ourselves or advertising online. Similarly with Airbnb, so if we have a spare room in our house, or perhaps we're going away for the weekend or the month or whatever else, and we want to let out our house, we can do that as well through the app. Halo and Uber obviously huge in terms of people services and incredibly popular worldwide. There's lots and lots of other services that are coming out as well that are app-driven. For example, TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit is, again, around more relatively low barrier to entry in terms of skills. These are people who are handymen, people who can assemble IKEA furniture, of which I am an absolute master if anybody needs any help, or to painting, again, to cleaning, babysitting services, etc. And then you have more high-skilled work as well, for Upwork, for example, where you'd have, I'm an app developer, or I'm a programmer, or I'm a business analyst, etc. I can, lend my skills at a daily rate, and everything is facilitated through the app itself in terms of contracts and payments. So in terms of temp volume staffing, this is the way forward. This is where individuals will manage their own time and not necessarily have to go through recruiters. However, recruiters are the ones with the database. So it could very well be that an app is developed by a recruitment company, a recruitment agency, etc., where it manages its people. And people can then just order those services through this app and become app-driven. I don't necessarily see it for permanent staffing. It's a little bit too far ahead, I think, but definitely on an as-needed basis in real time for people services, this is definitely what I see going forward. A second one of these trends then that I would like to highlight is reputation. Your reputation is absolutely everything. So any of the hotels that we visit, if we're booking a hotel online, does anybody book a hotel online where they've seen a poor rating or a poor review for that particular hotel and go, I'll book it anyway? No, didn't think so. But we all go on to TripAdvisor. We do definitely read the reviews. We always read the product reviews on Amazon, etc. We need those reviews to know this is a real life thing. This is what the hotel room looks in real life because the guests have put up their own photographs. And so hotels, restaurants, tourist attractions are owned by TripAdvisor and their rating. And they know that their reputation on this site is essential for their businesses. Now, this has come forward then, of course, into how employers are seen, whether that be an agency, whether that be a company itself. Lots and lots of companies are putting forward their actual reputations, these being Indeed, Glassdoor, and lots of other sites like this as well. Even Irish Jobs now has company ratings, which it's advertising all for the last couple of months. So your reputation as an employer is incredibly essential too, and we've all known this for a number of years. Where this is now moving into is the reputation of people. Individual people. For example, I'm a skilled solicitor. My reputation on Avo will become what gets me work. If I'm a barrister, for example, you're essentially self-employed. Your review of how people who have been represented by you in court will be what people get you and how you get business. For example, you've all heard of Rate My Teacher. Yes, this is one of the oldest serving examples of individual professionals within a particular sphere being rated by the people that they serve, or the parents of those that they serve. So Rate My Teacher, Avo, there's loads of these other websites around where we can rate individuals based on their profession. It's only a matter of time before other, like an accountant, a financial controller, for example, a programmer, a developer, etc., gets their rating from. It's also only a matter of time before you, as recruiters and HR professionals and talent management people, start getting reviews as well. And because we're all driven by our reputation, we need to start managing that reputation now. So does anybody actually send out a little questionnaire or a little survey to those who were part of the process, whether they were successful or unsuccessful, to give some feedback on how the process was? Does anybody do this at all? Is anybody brave enough to put up their hand? Couple down the back. Very good, excellent. Very, very small minority though. So this is something that we can all start doing from tomorrow morning. Thursday morning, I'm going to set up myself a little SurveyMonkey 10-question questionnaire where people just hit a little tick box. You know, have you any feedback on how the process went? Was there any element of the process that we did really well in? Is there any part of the process that we did really poorly on, etc.? Just really, really quick questions. And it gets us into the frame of mind that we know that our activities will be given feedback on by the people that we serve. When we're cognizant of that, when we know that our activities are going to be rated, we will improve them. Because it's only a matter of time before a website is set up that rates your recruiter. RateMyRecruiter.com, that URL has been taken, by the way, so it's only a matter of time before somebody actually does something with it. But your reputation at that stage will be too late. You want to make sure that your reputation is built and that you're getting it there in the meantime, rather than waiting for Rate My Recruiter to actually become a thing. And then finally is the candidate nurturing pool, inbound recruiting and candidate nurturing. So marketing analytics and marketing automation has been around for a very, very long time. And even longer before that, salespeople and marketers were segmenting their customers into different buckets. Which ones are very, very light touch, only at the very beginning of the process before they buy, which are a little bit more engaged, and who are those who are definitely going to purchase or have already purchased and are then recommending all their friends. This consumer decision-making process, this buckets that we assign people into. Well, we can do this as candidate leaders and talent attraction leaders as well. When we know that people are coming onto our website, we track them all, don't we? Everybody uses Google Analytics. As soon as you go onto any website that you've never been before, a little message will pop up to say, this website uses cookies. Click here to allow or click to get rid of this message. We all are aware that cookies are a thing on any website that we visit. This is what cookies do. So say, for example, I go onto a website. This is an employer. Maybe it's an agency. Maybe it's an individual employer that also is recruiting at the moment. And I go onto their website. For the first time, a little cookie is brought onto my browser. When I come back to that website, say I read a blog on day one, I come back a week later and I read another blog, and now I go, actually, I want to kind of find out a little bit more about this company, so I'll go onto the About Us page. And I read a little bit more, and they sound like a kind of a cool company. I'd like to perhaps see myself there or maybe do a little bit of business with them. That's, again, tracked with that cookie. I've visited twice. Now I come back a third week, and this time I download a salary survey. What am I worth on the open market? Something people are very, very, very interested in, and salary surveys are an incredibly powerful piece of content that recruiters can give to their candidates. So I download this white paper, and in order to be able to download this white paper, I need to give you my name, my email address, possibly even my phone number, some social information, etc. I can fill this form out with LinkedIn oftentimes as well. So once I've given my name, now rather than being known as person one in the analytics space, I'm now changed to Holly Fawcett. They know my name. As recruiters, you can do so much with that information. First of all, you know, okay, this person has come from blogs to now visiting our About Us page. She's downloaded a salary survey. This is kind of suggesting to me that this person may be looking for a job in the relatively near future. I think I might reach out to that person, maybe put them into my candidate talent pool, maybe just join with them on LinkedIn or follow them on Twitter or anything else, or just have a phone call. But also what I can do is, rather than just waiting for that person to know that their name is Holly Fawcett because their CV lands in my inbox, I can start marketing them with information. I can use the email address that this person gave me to forward them on more salary survey information or specific blogs relating to the type of work that I do. And I can just start nurturing this candidate, building that pipeline so that this candidate knows this is a team or a recruiter, individual recruiter, who is nurturing me as a potential candidate, and they will be the first person I think of when I start wanting to search for a job. There are lots and lots of reasons why people search for jobs. It's often correlated with the actual market, the employment market itself. The only place in the world which properly tracks the quit rate, the amount of people who quit their jobs, is the United States of America, the wonderful US, who their Bureau of Labor Statistics manage over time what the quit rate is, which is the line there in blue, and then base that over the employment or the unemployment rate in that economy as well. So you can see there's a really clear correlation between the amount of times people quit versus those who are unemployed. In a bad economy, people do not quit their jobs. In a good economy, they will. They will quit their jobs, they will move. We had an absolutely record year last year. It was the best year for 10 years, thank goodness, and hopefully this year continues to be the same. People will quit their jobs, which means that little bit of fluidity. What is the reason why they're quitting their jobs, and how can I get my message in front of the right customer at the right time? So there's loads of reasons, as I say, that people quit their jobs. Sometimes they are event-driven, and sometimes those events are time-bound. Perhaps they're time-bound for everybody, so the same time of year. Sometimes they're time-bound, but they're different for everybody. Having a little look at some of these events. Birthdays, for example. Has anybody reached the age of 30 and thought, oh, Jesus, I really need to get a real job? And I'm sure you've all dealt with candidates who have reached milestone birthdays where they're like, I need to get my act together. Yeah, I really need to get a new job. Impending parenthood, especially impending fatherhood, will absolutely trigger job-seeking behavior as well. In fact, 60% of men who know that they're becoming a dad in 9 months or less will change jobs within a year. So it's incredibly big trigger for men to start seeking jobs. After periods of holidays as well, so you've been away in the Bahamas for 3 weeks, the kids were off school, it was great, and now you're kind of thinking, oh, I have to go back to that job. I really didn't like it at all. I think I'll change. I think I'll have a little look for job seeker, for the jobs out in the market. Employer reviews as well, and getting your performance review, that can sometimes trigger job-seeking behavior because maybe you're on a performance improvement plan and you kind of think, I'm being managed out because the company's going in a different direction, or didn't particularly have a great review, I need to start moving, I need to go where my talents are actually appreciated. New Year is the biggest one. New year, new job, new me. Yeah? Everybody gets this. January is the biggest time for job-seeking activity. Graduation is another, being made redundant, burnout, poor performance, and bonus payments. This is another interesting one. So I'm sure as any agency recruiters in the room, as soon as bonus payments are calculated and then paid, which is usually around the end of February, beginning of March, that's when people will finally go, Grant, I've got my bonus, now I can start looking for a job. They will not quit their job before their bonus is calculated and paid because they won't receive it. So as we know, some of these are absolutely time-bound. This is a Google Trends map. Anybody who's done my bootcamp class will have known this Google Trends map. This is the word jobs. So just Google searching for the word jobs in Ireland over the last 11 years, I think, to nearly 12 years. So you can see there's a very, very clear pattern going on. We search for jobs roughly at the same time. Some of these are time-bound, as I say. So New Year has the biggest one here. So New Year, massive, massive uplift in those seeking the word jobs on Google. Next then we'll have the likes of your post-summer holidays. So post-summer holidays around the September time, that's another massive period of seeking jobs. And then those bonus payments as well, around the kind of March time, that's when you're seeing that huge uplift as well. So it really does ring true. There are events out there that will trigger job-seeking behavior. You just need to make sure that you've nurtured your candidates so that when that event happens, the first person that they call is you. So this candidate nurturing, as I say, is all about inbound recruiting. We want to make sure that the content that we're putting out there is getting into the good hands. We're putting it out on social posts. Once they come on from our social posts on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, they come over to our website. When they come onto our website, they start reading things like our case studies, our white papers, maybe we do webinars. We start getting that information about that candidate, and then finally start meeting that candidate in terms of opportunities, placing them and pulling them down through the funnel until they submit their CV. So those are my 3 trends. I am exactly at 15 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody. I will go on. Thank you.
Brilliant as always, Holly. Thank you. And Holly will join our panel. So I'd like to introduce our panel now. So starting with John Nurthen manages his team that delivers Staffing Industry Analysts international research content. Previous to that, John had over 25 years in the staffing and recruitment industry with some market leaders such as Select Appointments, VDR and Randstad. John was the founder of the International Review of Employment and DOVA. DOVA is one of the largest global databases of online vacancies. John is regarded as a global authority on recruitment and contingent workforce issues. So just put it together for John. Next we have Sean McDonagh. Sean has a career spanning well in excess of 25 years in Irish recruitment. Over the past 10 years, Sean is, as managing partner of Dalríada Executive Search and Recruitment, Sean and his team have worked with some of the biggest international companies, the biggest national companies at board and leadership level. Sean is a graduate of the National College of Ireland and is qualified with both a BA in HR and a Bachelor of Science in Management. Can we put it together for Sean? And finally, David Head. David is the founder of Recruitment International. Recruitment International work with the staffing and recruitment industry, providing insights worldwide. David launched the industry's first ever publication in 1987, The Interviewer. Recruitment International now runs events across 3 continents and publishes magazines in the UK, Ireland, Asia and Australia. A recipient of the REC's Lifetime Achievement Award in the UK, David continues to have a great passion for the recruitment industry. And again, his words, not mine, it's because he reckons he's otherwise unemployable. So put it together for David. So as you can see, our panel covers domestic, international and digital. So have your questions ready. We will have time for Q&A. But I'd like to start, this morning has been about attracting talent. I'd like to start by examining the changing nature of talent. So maybe with John, can you help define talent for us?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing that people think of as talent is your employees. But I would suggest that there's a much broader definition that people need to think about. And if you imagine, there's lots of different ways that work is conducted on behalf of your business. So that is, of course, by your employees, but there's a whole diverse group of non-employees as well. Contingent workers, which would include temporary agency workers, freelancers that are sourced by some of the platforms that you mentioned, Upwork, TaskRabbit, etc. It could be independent contractors. Beyond that, there'll be consultants that will be doing business on, conducting business on your behalf. Beyond that, you may be outsourcing work, you may be offshoring work. You need to think maybe even beyond that, you stretch the definition further, think of your supply chain. So I don't know how many people in the audience have heard of Foxconn. Do you know who Foxconn is? So Foxconn is Apple's manufacturer in China. And they quite often get accused of labour rights violations in China. Well, all that bad publicity doesn't accrue to Foxconn, obviously, because not many people have heard of them, but everybody's heard of Apple, and that goes to their reputation. And if we want to stretch the definition of talent beyond that, of course, these days, work is conducted on behalf of many businesses, not by human intelligence, but by artificial intelligence as well. So I do think that it's important that these days people think about talent in its very broadest definition. And one other sort of point, just to finish, we do lots of surveys. We're a research organisation. So one of the questions we ask workers and contingent workers is, what do you like to be called? And one thing that they don't like to be called is talent. So I realise that's not a particularly positive observation at a talent summit, but the talent does not like to be called talent.
Very good. It's probably got a few connotations, all right. Sean, from an Irish perspective, can you define talent?
Yeah, I would just say, firstly, I think it was a land this morning to see if we're talking about diversity here at the moment. I think we're the male and possibly pale. I don't think we're stale end of the stage here. I was told I'm here to see Holly. She's definitely the talent in relation to the room for the panel today. talent is why we're all here, I guess, in relation to the subject matter. I certainly think in terms of, as a recruiter, and I see a lot of ex-colleagues here and current colleagues as well, from our perspective in terms of finding and capturing talent. From a HR community perspective, in terms of nurturing and developing talent, from a management and a leadership perspective in terms of mentoring, guiding, and obviously leading talent to success. But one of the things, and I think it's an interesting aspect of the overall here, is the repositioning of talent. Because again, in terms of the discussion that we have here, is in terms of the talent gaps that are out in the marketplace right now at the moment, and certainly from an executive search perspective in terms of what I see. The millennium generation has said, again, don't define themselves in relation to the work that they do, have a much more broader context than that. The people that I see, and certainly in relation to the challenges that are out there from a disruptive technology perspective, and certainly in terms of disruptive change, the challenge is in terms of repositioning people. I think Robbie said it this morning in terms of how people define themselves, and certainly from my generation, I think it is, you are defined by what you do. But for us today, I think certainly it is about that repositioning and how we can bring people into other areas of work. I mean, I was driving into work this morning, and I was listening to News Talk, and I heard Rob Heffernan, the power endurance walker, just talking about his career and just in how he came to be so talented in terms of what he did, and it was purely by accident. I mean, I think we talk about if we're talking about Malcolm Gladwell's outliers in terms of 10,000 hours of practice in order to be good or to maximise talent. That's true to a certain extent, but it doesn't take into account that there are underlying talents, or people are naturally gifted in relation to some of the areas that they're involved with. And what Rob was saying was he was tested at 16 for, it was a VO2 level, which is basically his endurance level, which it was double the normal person. So it meant for him that, whatever he did from an endurance perspective, he was going to be talented. And I think that's the thing, certainly from my demographic, or certainly in terms of the generation that I come from, there are a lot of hidden talents there. And that's the thing in terms of being able to reposition that. And I think certainly there's some very, very good discussions around that, and we've had that over the week. And certainly from my perspective, that would be where I would see it in terms of talent.
Excellent. And David, from maybe a UK or Asia point of view, would you have anything to add to the mix?
Yeah, I think when you posed the question to me, Frank, about talent, and to define talent, my immediate reaction was, why are we trying to define something that's virtually undefinable? I mean, talent comes in many forms, it has no limits. Look at me, I'm very old, I think I'm probably unemployable, but maybe someone would take me on. Age, race, colour, creed, and I was really pleased that Adam kicked off this morning talking about disability. Because one of the other things I do is I'm very privileged. I've run my own business for 35 years. I'm also a trustee of a learning disabled charity. And that's one thing that we as a community have got to embrace a lot more. We have to look at areas of talent. And whilst Adam spoke about it, but he didn't give any instances. I'll give you a for instance in terms of talent. We have some very talented autistic people who are part of our charity. One of them has an incredible memory for remembering people and names. And he's employed by the local garden centre. And he basically does front of house for a restaurant at the local garden centre. And he remembers people and, hello Jean, how are you? How's the petunias growing? It is fantastic. It is just without doubt. And lots of people would dismiss it. And we also have people in wheelchairs, and people often just can't see past the wheelchair. They would if it was Stephen Hawking. But the thing is there. We need to embrace it. We need to do it. It's all about skills. It's all about recognising and putting people in an environment that recognises their talents. And it's excellent to hear people from SAP and Dell and all the big organisations that are doing this. And The introduction you did, Frank, about RI being across 3 continents and whatever, there's actually only 9 of us.
Wow.
But from those 9 employees, we have 4 male, 5 female. We have 3 old people, what I would call 6 young people. We have 2 Asians, 1 black. We have 1 LBGT member. We have a single parent family. But what underlines all of those is actually, and the single mother that we have started with me 30 years ago and has grown from being 16 years old to that. But actually, the underlying key thing for me is actually they're the right people for the job. And that's what talent's all about, right person for the job.
Diversity works when we've got to look hard for it, yeah. And from a HR perspective, has anyone heard of the term total talent management? Can you get a show of hands? About 5% maybe. John, you introduced this concept to me about 14 months ago. Can you just explain it to the audience, please?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I was at a conference last week in the US, and there was a speaker on the stage who was talking about total talent management, and he made the point that it's much too ambitious, and just a little bit more talent management would be a good thing. But total talent management is really the concept of taking a much more proactive and holistic view of the workforce. So going back to the way I described what talent is, all those different workers that are working on your behalf. At the moment, within most organisations, maybe all organisations, all those different types of workers are dealt with in silos. So the HR manager is probably got the responsibility for employees, maybe some of the temporary workers, or maybe that's procurement. Procurement has got responsibilities for other sort of outsourced services, statement of work operatives and things like that. The finance director decides what work's going to be outsourced and offshores. So people are making decisions about all these different talent options without joining up the dots. And if you think about workforce mix, within any company, within your company, there's an ideal workforce mix. Well, I'm willing to bet that you don't know what it is. So if I was to ask you to think about the contingent workers that I described, so temporary agency workers, independent contractors, freelancers, what proportion of that is your workforce? So I'm willing to bet that most of you are thinking of a number between 15 to 20%, because when we do surveys, that's normally the number that comes back. And what's interesting about that number is we know that people are guessing, because really you don't know, because there's all these little discrete consulting projects going on within your business that you're not bothering to monitor and control. There's line managers that are using platforms like Upwork, getting discrete tasks done that you don't even know about. So total talent management is about just trying to bring that all together and understanding what is the right workforce mix. And it's incredibly important because, as we all know, there are going to be skill shortages in the future. So the companies that are going to have a big advantage are going to be the ones that can tap into all that different forms of talent and maximise it.
Excellent. And before I forget, Holly, I always annoy you with this question. What's the best innovation or most exciting innovation you've seen recently in the last 12 months?
The last 12 months? I think it has to do with data, and it's something that we've been predicting for years. We'll wait until big data comes along, but finally we're actually doing something with it. And whether that's understanding the people that are actually inside your business and the data that they have, whether it's because one has a hobby as a photographer or anything else and be able to maximize that kind of thing, whether internal data and external data, it's having a platform there that'll turn the numbers into something that actually means something, and being able to read that. So in terms of innovation, there are a very, very small number of organizations who are doing this, but there are companies who are setting up marketing teams within their recruitment team who purely are based on data. Marketing people, I am one of them, have a real love of data-driven decisions, and they won't make decisions without the actual data there to prove it. They'll test, they'll experiment, they'll test again to make sure they tested right before they'll launch it out to everything. But they love experimenting, whereas a lot of recruitment teams and people within talent management would often just, they have their metrics that they need to reach. I need to make a minimum of 10 calls today, otherwise I haven't made my number. I need to make sure that I have at least 20 CV sends out today. why do you have those metrics there? Like, what is the bloody reason why you came up with 20 cents? Would 10 do if they're of better quality? So understanding the data behind those decisions is the best thing that you could do. And there are some platforms out there which are helping to manage them. Others are just about performance. Like, for example, if somebody spends their entire day on LinkedIn, which a lot of us are guilty of, aren't we? It's one of the first websites we open up on our desktops in the morning is LinkedIn. And that's not a bad thing. I'm a LinkedIn addict as well. But is that a bad thing? Is making sure that you're actually being on the phone rather than sending emails a bad thing? And I think it differs for everybody. It differs for different parts of your team. So you need to know, okay, well, this person works on IT recruitment, and they do not work on LinkedIn. So therefore, having my entire day spent on LinkedIn is a total waste of a day. Similarly, trying to make phone calls to those individuals is an absolute waste of a day as well, because they look at their phone and go, oh my God, it's ringing. And they'll put it on silent or they'll do something else. If you send them a WhatsApp message, or if you send them a message on Slack, or if you send them a message on WhatsApp, or anything else where they don't have to speak to you, that'll be way better. Similarly, email works incredibly well. In-mail, it's all right, but ringing them on the phone doesn't. If you want to speak to a CEO, ringing them on the phone works very well.
Very good.
So it's understanding the data behind all of those things. That's the biggest innovation that I'm seeing.
Excellent, excellent. Time is against us, so I'd like to just move quickly on to the area of robotics and artificial intelligence. So this is an area that both frightens and fascinates me. Sean, I know you're quite positive on this area. In fact, you see machines as talent. So is it a collaboration or competition? Discuss.
Thanks for that, Frank. I certainly do. I mean, I think certainly from an industry perspective, and particularly from an executive search perspective, I don't think the industry had changed that much over 50 years, but certainly the needle has moved hugely in the last 5 years. I was talking to our group CEO about this last night, just saying that, where we started 25 years ago, and it only seems like yesterday in some aspects, but there's a picture floating around somewhere of us. I think I look about 12, and AD looks he looks the same as he does now, actually, in fairness. But it was our first computer, and up to that point, I think, we were literally hugely manually focused in terms of sifting, faxing CVs and everything else. As it is now, I mean, technology has made a huge amount of difference to us. I think certainly from a research perspective, and Holly said this in terms of actually being able to mine data effectively, there is a huge amount there. I certainly see it, as a digital adopter. I know my two kids are 10 and 14. I'm still a hero to one and a liability to the other at this particular point in time. But looking at them and certainly seeing where the jobs of the future are going to come from them, it's I think Holly and I discussed this last night as to 65, the U.S. labor statistics, 65% of jobs in the next 10 years with no idea what they're going to be. So it's fascinating. But as I said, in terms of our business, there's a huge amount of data that is there. We talk about LinkedIn, and those of us certainly in terms of search profession would use it. It's an excellent tool, but I would say there is a huge amount of noise around that. Collecting the silent data is really where it's at for us. And certainly from an executive search perspective in terms of mining that, and if you look at people's profiles, I mean, obviously in charge of it, you're going to push your best face forward in relation to that. But being able to analyze, to be able to get in under the data from that side, and certainly from an executive perspective in terms of the network that's there, to be able to find and to question that data, to mine those individuals is key for us.
Excellent. And John, you introduced me to a company called WorkFusion, which probably their model is a very good indication of what artificial intelligence can do. So has anyone heard of that company, WorkFusion? No one?
Well, one at the back.
Oh, one, sorry.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So can you maybe introduce it to the audience?
Yeah, so I mean, it is very much what you might think is a model of the future when it comes to utilising artificial intelligence at work. So they're a company based in New York, and their sweet spot is banks and insurance companies, and it's simple data processing tasks. So if you commission them to do a project on behalf of your business, to start with, they will crowdsource that project. They will send it to thousands of freelancers around the world who do these simple data processing tasks. It's very mundane, boring work, and humans make a lot of mistakes. What's interesting is that as the project is, they have artificial intelligence that's monitoring what the workers are doing. And over time, the robots replace what the crowdsourced workers are doing. So a mature project would be one where 90% of the work is done by artificial intelligence, 10% is still done by humans because they still want the humans to continue doing the work so that the artificial intelligence can learn. And this is learning technology, so it's the same sort of technology that you get with Google cars. Google cars aren't programmed to do stuff, Google cars learn to do stuff. And this is the same sort of technology. And I think what's interesting about the model is that if you go to this company, you buy a software license. That's the way they sell their services, as a software license. So a completely different way of thinking about how work can be done. And they're looking to expand their services beyond just straightforward data processing as well.
See, that's why I'm a bit scared. To move it on towards the future landscape, and David, if I could start with you. What does the future of work look like?
I think it looks like it always has done, Frank, to be honest. People will just react in different ways across the globe. Much has been said about millennials already. Everyone's been saying about millennials. Most people have probably heard of Robert Walters, the recruitment company. They did a massive research project around the world asking millennials what they did and didn't like. And the biggest finding was that millennials don't like to be called millennials. They discovered that, and so the young professionals, they work very differently. And Sean just said about his children. Our children work incredibly different. My children find it hard to believe when I did exams, we didn't even have a calculator. To them, it's just like abhorrent. Well, you must have had that, and how did you ever get by without a fax machine? And these things come along, and technology has to be embraced and welcomed. And artificial intelligence and robots, we're not all going to get replaced. It's not going to happen. But I think what will happen is, as we get to these Uber platforms, and Holly mentioned TaskRabbit, there's already a huge number of these out there, like Wonolo, Olancer Desk, and Freelancer.com. In fact, there was some research recently, which you and I shared, and we looked at from the University of Hertford, which shows that in the UK currently there are approximately now 5 million people getting paid on Uber platforms. So of those 5 million people, who is responsible? Who is the employer? Who looks after the responsibility of that person? If that person does something wrong, where does the buck stop? How do the governments control this? And I think that's one of the things that we in our field have to make sure we control. We have to make sure we keep an eye and we take responsibility for these people. And things just change in general, and that's what we have to do. We have to adapt to it. We did some awards at the end of last year in Tokyo. One of the companies I was talking to said, well, the way of life in Japan is changed. No longer, we all know there's no longer a job for life in Japan. That's quite a thing. But there's some staggering stuff coming out over there. One academic over there said that for every young lady born in Japan in 2014, an incredible 20% of them will live to be 100 years old. 11% will be 110, and quite incredibly, probably 4% of girls born in 2014 will live to be 120 plus. So that's an awful lot of retirement. So how we work, how we do it, you're going to have to start rethinking. So it's down to us to work to the conditions and the environments that we're in. That would be my observations on where talent and how work is going to change.
Very good. John, you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, just a point of difference with what David was saying. I mean, I do think that artificial intelligence will impact the workforce quite significantly. You see lots of different reports about how significant. The first thing that was published, I think, was by 2 Oxford academics, Frey and Osborne, a couple of years ago, where they looked at all US jobs and they calculated that 47% of all US jobs were under threat through automation over the next 10 to 20 years. I mean, that's quite a scary number. So let's assume they're wrong. Let's assume it's only half that or only a quarter of that. That's still a big number. So jobs are going to change. The big question is technology a destroyer of jobs or is it a creator? And of course, in truth, it's both. What people don't really understand at the moment is it going to destroy more jobs than it creates? Normally with these sort of revolutions that happen in employment, although it can be catastrophic on a personal level that somebody loses their job, bad jobs are normally replaced by better jobs. So there is hope that that will happen in the future. I should say that I'm somewhat biased because our company is based in the heart of Silicon Valley, and we do actually have a robot at work. So
very good. Have you named it?
Well, it's actually called a telepresence robot. Yeah, you can get one for $1,500 in Northern California.
Very good. Very good. Holly, do you want to come in there?
Yes, I think for these better jobs that are coming in and everything else, I mean, technology is as simple as, you know, an electric hand mixer will make a baker more effective and be able to scale. A car has enabled people to get to places faster and therefore have been able to scale. You know, anything to do with robotics has enabled humans to scale products and everything else. It's enabled us as a race to be able to scale. We've gone from 1 billion people 120 years ago to now having 7 billion people on our planet. Everything is to do with scale. And I think when you have employers keeping people in jobs where their work is monotonous and doesn't empower the business to scale, simply they don't want to get rid of them or they're just not forward thinking enough, they're missing out because one, that person could be doing something so much better and it can be in something completely different. You know, I think that's something that as a workforce we needed to really embrace. Like my dad and I were only having this conversation maybe about 2 weeks ago. He was saying, you know, people are going in from college and they're going into dead-end jobs. Maybe they're only in it like for 2 years and then they completely change and go do something else. Whereas he's been a plumber all of his life. And it's been that job and that's it. Like, well, you know, I've had at least 2 careers, Dad, and I've just turned 30. Like, there's at least, you know, several different changes that we go through in our lives. And that's because these fundamental disruptors come into our lives as you know, as mobile apps comes and digital presence becomes the business of the future. We can't plan from the time that we're small and go through different subjects in school and choose our leaving cert subjects and then go into college and be that thing, because it mightn't exist in 10 years. So I think we just need to embrace it and go, do you know what, I'm going to train to be an accountant, but, you know, if I decide to be a nurse at the end of the day, who cares? Or if I go on to be a doctor, or if I go on to be a programmer and build the computer that's going to replace me, that's fine.
Excellent. And Sean, maybe from an Irish perspective, is there any shortages or?
Well, I'd first say to that point as well, Frankie, just in terms of you know, the future. I mean, we've seen it in relation to the last number of years, in relation to the economy here and what has happened and the amount of diversification that's come out of that. I mean, our own head of research is a barrister and now heads up our research team. I think it presents an awful lot of opportunities. If you look at Dublin now, I think we're certainly probably about 50 or 60% of the entire aviation leasing business has come from here. And why? You know, it came from the roots of GPA, and certainly in terms of people learning their trades there and diversifying out and the networks that they have. And I think in terms of the talent that we have here, as people move through their careers and move into different areas, the skill sets that they have and they will flow out in terms of other areas. We'll certainly see a lot of change from that end. In terms of current skill sets, I mean, you know, we all know it's out there. Technology is a big aspect in terms of where the gaps are going to be. Again, in terms of how we retrain, and I think in terms of you know, getting girls into that particular space is key. I mean, we see it certainly, you know, it has been talked about previously, but in terms of getting girls into maths, science and IT-related subjects is absolutely core. But for me, from a senior perspective, leadership skills really is where it's at. And I think, the ability to manage change, certainly in terms of any of my clients, in terms of what I see, I mean, yes, there's a given in relation to the commercial experience somebody may need, the strategic aspect of it. But a huge aspect is around that change management piece. And it is hugely important, specifically in terms of disruptive change in terms of business models and being able to manage, motivate and lead teams from that. And again, it is interesting in terms of where we find ourselves right now in terms of the current economic cycle, because from a leadership perspective, the captain of the ship that you need in the Arctic Circle isn't necessarily the same captain that you need when you're in the Bahamas. And, that is a challenge, but it does come down to it for me, is the softer side rather than the actual technical ability in terms of.
And is there a shortage of leadership talent in the Irish market?
I would say, there is certainly, there's a defined amount, I'd put it like that. I'd certainly like to see, in terms of any of our shortlisting processes that we go through, the level of female talent that we're seeing is absolutely excellent, but there's not an awful lot of it. And I think, again, we talked about that on Monday with Patty at the breakfast briefing there, that, as technology is changing, there is absolutely no reason, both in terms of, the knowledge that is out there, both in terms of pay grades and opportunities out there, that we shouldn't see that coming forward. But I would like to see, certainly like to see more women on that side.
Excellent. David, you touched on something there, remote working and some of the challenges it's going to give to the HR community over the next few years in terms of legislation or lack of legislation. If I could ask the panel, if I could start with you, David, could you outline some of those kind of dangers or some things we should be on the lookout for? And maybe, John, you might tell us from the US, their experience, which is a bit different.
Well, yeah, I suppose the biggest thing with remote working is it's just the sheer danger of it in terms of, if I go back, we had a magazine for residential estate agents back in the early 80s, and hopefully some people remember Susie Lamplew, the estate agent lady that literally went out on an appointment and disappeared. Yeah. This is all pre-technology, so we have technology now to help this, but it still goes on, and it's one of those things which I think we as employers, we just need to be more aware of some of those factors.
So basic things like health and safety policy, how do you apply it to a remote worker?
Correct, yeah. I mean, once again, as I said earlier on, who takes responsibility? Who is literally in charge of these? And my readership are recruitment companies, and very often we're used as a means to be seen as the employer, and the hiring companies don't want to be seen as the hiring companies, and legislation in the States has just come around to, Congress is trying to stop that. I just think that we need to be a little bit more grown up. If someone works for us, they work for us. Let's look after them. They are the future of our companies, of our businesses, and it doesn't matter if they work for us for 1 hour a week, coming in and doing the cleaning of your office or whatever they happen to do. Just treat people as you want to be treated, and I just think the world would be actually a little bit of a better place if we did that with our workers.
Very good. John?
Yeah, so I mean, I would agree with what David says. I mean, there's not a level playing field at the moment, so recruitment agencies, they are responsible for paying tax and other social insurances. These freelance platforms, that's not their responsibility. They're just the intermediary. They're helping independent contractors find work. It's up to them to make sure they're paying the proper tax. So it's very difficult to see what the difference is, because the recruitment company is just as much an intermediary. It's just the difference is one is offline, the other one's online. So governments in this area, like in many other areas related to the internet, legislation hasn't quite caught up with what's happening in the real world. But I would say that when governments do wake up to the fact that there's a lot going on here that they need to address, it's a wonderful opportunity for them, because we all know that governments want more tax revenue. Now, these sort of freelance arrangements used to go on before there was a digital platform to do it. Now there's a whole digital record of who's been doing what work and how much they're getting paid. So that's a big opportunity for governments. And I do think as well, I mean, because we can look at these platforms in a negative way, but they are giving huge opportunities for people who would find it difficult to get access to work. They may have commitments at home. They may have disabilities. You know, they may be working in very poor economies, so the opportunity to do any work is a wonderful thing. So there are reasons to worry about where legislation is, but on the whole, there are lots of positive things about these platforms as well.
Excellent. Holly, you wanted to come in?
Yes, definitely. I think it's really, really important that we don't wait for HR policy / legislation to catch up with the pace of innovation, because it's going at breakneck speed. And if people want to work from home, let them work from home. It's fine. They don't really need to be inside an office. I mean, we launched our global recruiting survey for 2016. This just looked at people as recruiters and what they do in their ordinary day jobs. One of the questions we asked was, do you work from home at all? So, at all, I'm allowed to work from home, but I choose not to. 1 day a week, 2 to 3 days a week, etc., full-time from home. And almost nobody from Ireland said that they were allowed to work from home at all. So we're just restrictive in that regard. It makes no sense to have to come all the way into the office. It's why we have such terrible traffic problems and everybody drives and we have crap public services, because everyone has to get to the same place at the same time. And then when it comes to things like childcare and all that kind of thing, it does mean that people drop out because that flexibility is not there. And sometimes people just don't work very well in offices. I, for one, need to be in a quiet place. I need to be in the matrix, you know, when I'm really getting down to doing really, really intensive work. And the office, for me, is not that place, because I'm pestered by questions, phone calls, emails, the works. I need a quiet space, and sometimes that's my living room couch. You know, and when you ask people, where do you come up with great ideas? Where do you go? Do you go for a walk? You know, do you come up with great ideas in the shower? Almost nobody says, I come up with great ideas at my desk. So we need to be more flexible with regards to where that workspace is. And there are tools out there. There's definitely technology that can manage and monitor how people are working, but we shouldn't be. We should just be monitoring the outputs, not the inputs for their work, and that's it. And I think definitely working from home or flexible working space is the future.
Outputs, not inputs.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I absolutely agree with Holly from that. I mean, it is about outputs. It really doesn't matter where you operate from, as long as you're being effective. And I think, again, seeing it from an employer perspective, you know, having that flexibility for your staff. I mean, actually, one of my clients, we were just talking about this the other day, and they do operate this policy. And it's interesting, you know, that the only day of the week that you can't get car parking is Wednesday, because it's the day generally people tend to come into town to do their day-to-day face-to-face. But other than that, it's, you know, let's, you know, do what you need to do. I think the danger with it, of course, is that, you know, obviously technology is encroaching on our everyday life, and, you know, the lines are blurring between, you know, our work day and our free time, and I don't think there is such a thing anymore. But as long as you're effective, but I think you do need to manage that as well. That is key.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank our panel, and if we could put our hands together for them.